alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is returning guest Kristine Raymond. Welcome back, Kristine.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me back. How you doing?
It's great to have you. Doing okay. I mean, we're quarantined still as of recording this, but hopefully not for too much longer, but who can say? Yes, this is the first podcast I recording since COVID-19 started.
Well, I like to think I've been preparing for this my entire life because, I just self-isolate just as the norm. I like being home. I don't like going out, so...
Yeah, I haven't actually, to be honest, not much has changed for me except that I have a lot more people in the house, which is actually kind of a bother because now I have fewer places I can write. But that's okay. I got too comfortable with the spreading out and filling up the space. But now that everybody's working from home, it's a bit of a bother. Anyway, that's enough about that. And who knows? Maybe this little time capsule will be. We can talk COVID-19 if people want, but I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, no, I get enough of it during the day.
Exactly. The news is always on that topic too. Everyone's got to be worried about it, which makes perfect sense. But briefly, what have you been writing lately? I mean, you've been on the podcast before, so fill people in about what's going on with you these days.
Well, my writing is kind of at that place where I have the idea in my head. I know what I want to have happen, but the words just are not coming out the way I want them to. So, as we talked about in the past, I'm very much, I have to know not what's going on ahead of time, but I have to know, I have to have the first chapter where I want it before I can move on to the second. I'm a very linear writer like that. And so what I'm working on is Finicky Eaters, which is the follow-up book to Finn-agled, which came out last July. And it's the second book in the Finn's Finds Cozy Mystery series. And I don't know. There's something wrong with it. I just have not been able to pinpoint what it is to get past it, to move on. So it's one of these works in progress where I'm just constantly reworking it. But I also know in my heart that I will get past what this is. I will identify what's wrong with the story, and it will just be brilliant once it's on. Once it's done. There, I've said it. It'll be brilliant.
Hey, good to have that confidence. It's funny because I just recently threw out 80,000 words of a book that I was writing. So basically, I had to start over from scratch because it was just the wrong book. I'd written about half a book for this length that I was looking at. Yeah, it was a lot of words. Had to do it. Sometimes it's the only way, but But if you go more slowly, I think it tends to happen less, which is the only, if you pace over the chapters more, because I just tore through those 80,000 words the first time. And then I got lost, and I'm like, this isn't working. So it took me a couple months to get back to it and realize that those words just had to go. That's where I'm at.
Well, and that's the thing, and I think it's important for an author to recognize that even though it's heart-wrenching to throw out, the work that you've poured yourself into for over whatever period of time it is, those words mean something when you're putting them down on paper, or computer or whatever, however it is you write. So it's really difficult to say, you know what, this isn't working. I need to start from scratch. But at the same time, that's so important to recognize that that you have to do that for the process to work, for the story that you're trying to get out to be the best it can be. Sometimes you do have to just start over.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it was a hard decision to come to because, again, having basically a whole novel worth of words and just saying these are the wrong words. Well, I mean, in a way, I didn't even throw them away because they're just They're just not. They just were the wrong words for this book. I mean, I don't think I'll ever use them for anything, like so many words I've written lately. But it's one of those things that just has to be done sometimes, and especially when you're writing too quickly and not doing the groundwork, which is another big. That's the big lesson I'm taking away from this. Is I didn't quite do enough groundwork for this because I thought, oh, it's a sequel, it'll be fine. I did some groundwork. I was excited. I started and it went in the wrong direction because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted the story to be. And I don't really outline or do any of that stuff, but I do need to know what I want out of a story or I can't write it that way. That's kind of obvious, but it makes sense. And it's something that it just doesn't occur to me all the time, you know? I think it sounds obvious when I say it, though. So, enough about me.
I'm not an outliner.
You're not an outliner either?
No, I know the basic plot. Like I know the I know the pivotal point in the story, like what I want to have happen in that story, but how to get there and how to get from that point to the rest of it, yeah, I never know that. I just kind of wing it as I write.
Exactly. I mean, it's more or less what I do as well. I have a few points in the middle sometimes as well, but that's basically how I do it. And then but I mean, just knowing the genre that I'm really targeting is also kind of important because I don't like tell a different story than the one I want, but I try to, the way I tell it changes sometimes based on what genre I'm doing. And I mean, honestly, a lot of authors, they stick to one genre. Do you stick to one genre? More or less?
No, I started out in historical Western romance, and then I wrote some contemporary romance, and then I wrote an erotic drama, and now I'm in cozy mystery. And I wrote a little nonfiction book.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, jumping around. I mean, that's more or less. I mean, I've honestly jumped around too much for my own good. And I still have trouble with that. I mean, the old ADHD kicks me in the head every now and then, and I just feel like I got to write something different, you know?
Yeah, I understand that, and I think I really that's another thing that works for me is embracing the story that comes to me as it is. Like, what I mean by that is sort of getting burnt out on it, and I wanted to write something different. And Finn-agled originally was going to be a thriller. That's what I sat down and intended to write because that's kind of where I thought I wanted to be. And as I was writing it, it just developed into a cozy, and I had so much fun developing the character and just with the whole tone of the story. And I still might write a thriller. I mean, that idea is still in my notepad, in my little book that I carry around that has all my story ideas in it. But I don't know. I just really believe that you should write the story that comes to you, regardless of what genre it's in.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I guess the reason I'm trying to jump around less is because I want to do series fiction, but it's challenging for me. Some people naturally think that way, though. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so not to get too much dead air there, but yeah. So when you're writing because you're writing a sequel too, what are some of the challenges you've run into with a sequel, other than just the shiny new objects that are off of the sides?
Writing all over again. You want to give the readers enough information. Like I want to introduce the characters to those readers who may not have read the first book, but I don't want to tell the first book all over again. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing for me is going into it and saying, okay, I need to present it in such a way that that makes everybody happy, which is impossible to do. But that's kind of the goal, that you don't want readers who like Finn-agled to pick it up and say, oh my gosh, I'm bored. I already know all of this. Get to the story already. But you don't want new readers to pick it up and say, who are these people?
Exactly.
What's going
Yeah.
on? And I'm always afraid of doing that. But with the Hidden Spring series, I wrote 9 books, and I faced the same thing in each one of those. And in a way, it was kind of different because each book is about a different character. So in that sense, I didn't have as much of a problem. But because it was still the same setting, it was the same town, the characters were all the same. It's just the focus of each character changed with each book. I still kind of really had to watch myself that I didn't fall back. It's kind of like a comfort zone almost, because you've already done it once. You just want to do it over and over again. But it's just really a challenge to make it different and still comfortable. And I don't know if that made any sense at all. It did in my head before I started talking.
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. I was just thinking, making it, because comfort is one reason people read books in the same series. They want to get their familiar characters, the characters they like from the earlier books, but then they also want something different every time. And it depends what that different is. Sometimes it's just different plot, moving the story forward in the case of these kind of big epic fantasies, like the kind I'm trying to write, or they want whole new characters to add on too, which is kind of what I'm doing as well. But but it depends on the genre, how much of the book should basically be similar to the previous book, and how much of it should be more different, divergent. And I'm not sure. I'm no expert on I'm no expert on series though. So, in your experience with the Western romance, right? That was the Hidden Spring. How much did you try to keep familiar with that stuff versus doing different storylines? Or because romance, it tends to be pretty similar, right? In the storyline department, anyway.
Well, it's similar in the way that you want to have happily ever after or happily for now. I mean, that's kind of what classifies a romance. So that your characters are going to get together.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You can kind of do a lot of different things. I like to think that with Hidden Springs, each of the challenges that my couples faced were in the previous one.
That makes sense.
Story.
That makes sense.
Because you don't want them all to be facing the same, the ex-girlfriend or the ex-boyfriend or that kind of thing. You want the challenges to be different, but in the end they overcome and they, live happily ever after, or don't. Who knows? Not to give anything away, but I did say it was a happily ever after, a happily for now. So yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's not giving away. That's the thing I was trying to get at there. Kind of, with depending on what your genre is, you're not really getting you're not really going to be surprised, but you'd be disappointed if there wasn't a happily ever after or happily for now in a romance. If you're a reader anyway, because you set
right.
The book set the reader up for something.
Yes, and readers will get together. I mean, they're expecting that. So as an author, if you don't deliver that in a romance, then honestly, it's really not a romance. And it kind of cracks me up because I've gotten reviews on some of my books where the reviewer says, well, I saw that coming. I saw that they were going to get together. Well, yes, because it's a romance. I hope you saw that they were, I hope you knew that, because the story is how they get there. It's not that they did get there.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And that's almost, I mean, or it's like a mystery where you're going to catch the culprit. You're going to always catch the culprit in a murder mystery, pretty much, or at least you're going to know who they are at the end, even if you don't catch them. Which it seems like a corner case, but I think that might be possible. It's that sort of thing.
Right. Right. Nobody wants to read a mystery and get to the end and not know who done it. I mean, that's
That's the whole point.
then you just sit there and think, it kind of reminds me of that episode of MASH where they're passing around the book. What is it? The Rooster Crows at Midnight, I think is what the book was called. And they get to the end and the last page is gone and nobody knows who did.
Oh no.
That was a great episode.
I've never seen that one, but that's hilarious. Imagine that though. Imagine you've been reading the same book for like weeks and weeks, and you realize I'm never going to know how this ends, or at least not for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, that would be so frustrating.
That's speaking of which, we are getting to the part where we watches and reads. What have we been watching and reading lately? So, Kristine, have you got anything you can recommend or not recommend, as the case is?
Well, honestly, from when this whole COVID-19 pandemic thing started, it got me in the mood to reread The Stand by Stephen King.
Oh boy.
Which I can recommend. I think that is an excellent book. It's my favorite of Stephen King's, and it's very thick. And
Yes,
I've only been reading a little bit at night, so it will probably last me the entire pandemic. But yeah, that's what I've been reading. And as far as watching, I've been watching some old episodes of Quantum Leap, which I forgot how much I enjoyed that show.
Wow, cool. I've never seen that one, but I'm watching The Magicians for the first time. I'm still in season 1, almost done with season 1 of The Magicians. And then I'm still reading a bunch of fiction books that I've mentioned before on this podcast, including The Warded Man, and there must be some others, but I can't remember them all right off the top of my head. So that's where I'm at for reading and watching right now. Yeah. So
do you read more than one book at once?
Well, I'm very bad. My ADHD acts up badly, I should say. I do bounce between books. It's true. But it takes me forever to actually finish anything. I think the last book I finished reading, mentioned in this show, was Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon, which is a literary fiction. But it's very funny. At least, yeah. If you're up for weird stuff, anyway. Yeah. So anyway. What were you saying?
Look for that.
Yeah, it's a good book.
I'll have to look for that book. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a movie too, and I haven't seen the movie yet, but I hear that's good as well. One of my other writer friends mentioned that to me, as when I told them I'd read the book. But yeah. So Kristine, let people know where they can find you and where they can read your stuff.
Well, the best way to find links to all of my books is through my website, which is www.KristineRaymond.com, and that is Kristine with a K. My books are available on all the major platforms and probably some minor ones too. You'll find the Hidden Springs series. The first book in that series, Here to Stay, is free on all platforms. So if you want to kind of get a taste of what Hidden Springs is all about. And then I have the Celebration series, which is contemporary romance. I have some standalones, and Finn-agled, which is the first Finn's Finds mystery. And hopefully not too much longer. Maybe. We'll see. Finicky Eaters will be out, and that is the second in the Finn's Finds mystery series. I also host a podcast called Wordplay with Kristine Raymond, where I chat with author guests, very similar to how Tim and I are chatting. In fact, he was on my show. That's how we got to know each other. And I am also co-hosting a new podcast with author Dawn Hosmer called The Felonious Scribe, and you can find that on YouTube. The first 2 episodes are up on YouTube, and the next episode will air next Friday.
Take note, folks. You got another podcast in the neighborhood.
Yes.
So, yeah, everybody go check that out. And yeah, as for this podcast, thanks for being on the show, Kristine. It's been fun. And
thanks for having me again. I love catching up with you.
It's great. It's great. I mean, yeah. And it's for me. You can find my books on Amazon.com. Forces of Empire Book One, or it's entitled Origin of Storms, is out there. You can get the Demon Hunter book, the first Demon Hunter book, Demon Scroll, out there. You can find Ten Liars out there. That's probably my favorite one of the three currently. Which is, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to pick a favorite, but there you go. Those used to be multiple novella series books, but now they're all collected into big, big, beautiful, epic novels, which is really what they should have been all along. So go check those three out. Once maybe I should tell you a little bit about them, but I think you've heard enough from me for one day. So thanks for listening, everybody. Check us out at mentalcellarpublications.com. And thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.